In reality, however, torture and ill treatment between the universal prohibition and the worldwide complacency with such abuse is not a singular phenomenon, but highlights a more generalized gap between the declared ambitions and the actual practice of human rights protection. In fact, the persistent failure of the international community to eradicate torture and ill treatment exemplifies the broader incapacity of contemporary governance systems to fulfill the promises of the UN Charter, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. In response to this sobering reality, my newest report takes a step back from the usual legal and policy discourse and explores the phenomenon of torture and ill treatment from the scientific perspective of neurobiology and social psychology. Overall, the resulting findings strongly suggest that the root cause for the persistent complacency with torture and ill treatment is not primarily a lack of expertise, resources, or normative consensus, nor generalized malicious intent, but lies in neurobiological and psychosocial factors that have shaped human decision-making throughout history. Most notably, contrary to the presumptions of rationality, morality, and public interest which underlie modern statehood, most human decision-making, in fact, remains guided by largely unconscious emotional impulses, pursues perceived short-term self-interest, and is consciously rationalized only ex post facto. This also applies to complex collective decision-making processes such as democratic elections, political appointments, judicial oversight, media reporting, and even the formation of public opinion more generally. Human self-interest has multiple aspects, including self-preservation, self-determination, self-affirmation, self-justification, and self-gratification. In normal circumstances, the natural human pursuit of self-interest will be expressed in line with surrounding moral and legal order. However, when distorted by excessive fear, pathological dysfunction, or experiences of trauma, perceived self-interest can trigger serious human rights violations which are irreconcilable with universally recognized legal and moral norms. In such situations, both perpetrators and bystanders tend to suppress the resulting moral dilemmas through largely unconscious patterns of self-deception and, in particular, through denial of fact, denial of responsibility, or denial of wrongfulness. Clearly, as a matter of law, such patterns of denial cannot under any circumstances justify torture or ill treatment. As neurobiological and psychosocial patterns of self-deception, however, they severely impair the ability and willingness of political leaders, judges, officials, the media, and even the general public to accurately perceive and act upon allegations of official misconduct. By distorting perceptions of reality, narratives of self-deception and denial can corrupt and neutralize even sophisticated frameworks for the prevention and prosecution of torture and ill treatment, thus producing the current worldwide prevalence of complacency and impunity. Accordingly, in my official dialogue with states relating to allegations of torture or ill treatment, I routinely encounter all of these patterns of self-deception and denial, even in the face of compelling evidence. Indeed, as neurobiological and psychosocial research have demonstrated, in the face of unwelcome information, every single one of us is inescapably affected by the innate human tendency towards self-deception and denial, regardless of our education, our status, or our morality. This is not a malicious deviation, but a scientific fact devoid of moral connotations which cannot be changed. As an inherent part of human nature, it should not be condemned, but must be fully acknowledged and appropriately managed in order to prevent the widespread corruption, destruction, and cruelty which currently engulf the entire world. Most importantly, any global governance system seeking to fulfill the promises of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the UN Charter, and the SDGs for 2030 must be based on a realistic, empirical, and science-based conception of human nature without moral idealization or judgmentalism, and must build normative and institutional frameworks specifically designed to mitigate the increasingly existential risks arising from human self-deception and denial of reality. not only in the area of human rights, but also of environmental protection, financial stability, and the prevention of pandemics. With this in mind, my report closes with a series of recommendations for global governance reform, which I will be happy to discuss further during our interactive dialogue. I thank you for your attention.
Doy las gracias al señor relator especial por su intervención y ahora daré la palabra a quienes deseen formular preguntas o observaciones al señor Melzer. Reitero, como lo dije anteriormente, que las delegaciones deberían limitar sus observaciones a 2 o 3 minutos. También invitamos a los participantes que deseen hacer comentarios y realizar preguntas al orador a utilizar el formulario de solicitud accesible en el panel de chat del portal Interprify, dentro de los próximos 3 minutos, después de los cuales se cerrará la lista. Les agradezco por su cooperación y ahora daré la palabra